a performance clinic, right? This one's going to be a quick, short one, but I guarantee you it's going to be fiery just because all we're going to talk about is ways that you actually, what you're doing right now that actually costing you money and losing you money, regardless of, what's going on, what your size, and you can actually, there's a reflection on my end of these are mistakes I have made. And I love sharing that experience. Yeah, it's kind of, yeah, dude. Like I want to pass it forward, because if I'm going to lose money, you guys don't have to. Yeah. And I mean, shoot, dude. I mean, let's get right into it, right? So I love telling this story where I used to have a remote admin who just refused to document things, even on a Google Doc, right? This is bare bone. When I first started, we didn't have any system that we have right now. So like back then, I would say, hey, just write all the name of the leads, name, email, phone number, address into this Google Doc with some notes, right? Who are they? Why are they here? All that stuff. We're not even granular like what we're doing now. And the biggest pushback was like, nope, I work better with my notebook. And I say, hey, listen, I'm going to need you to not use that notebook and just do this on Excel spreadsheet, right? Because she was remote and it was just me. The hardest thing was to keep people accountable, right? If you're a clinician that is just managing the clinic, like you're at that point, I was just treating. I wasn't even managing the clinic, right? I was just like, hey, let me treat, generate some income. You do your job. And the hardest thing is what the biggest misconception is that when you hire someone, you would assume that they would just do the thing you ask them to do. That is not the case, because sometimes you hire people and they're just not doing anything at all. And so the one thing I've learned from that was, when time come to an end and we actually needed those information, it was not available. And right then and there, she was with me for a year and a half. And I could tell you there were at least probably 300 leads that I did not get to even contact afterwards, just because it was not in the system. We didn't have a CRM to email people, right? If you guys are looking at this right now and you have someone that's running your front desk, whether in person or remote, and they can follow the simple process of just like, hey, document the leads, give me all the information so that way we can reach out to them, that's a big red flag, because that's going to cost you so much money. Because Justin, you run ads all the time, right? Cost per lead goes up no matter what. And it's going to go up even more in the election year. You know this, because everyone's going to start advertising on Facebook, on Google, and that's going to eat into your marketing dollars. And if you don't have the leads from the past you can nurture and get in touch with and convert them down the road, you're losing money right then and there.
Yeah. I think there's a couple of key things that I just want to highlight from what you said. Number one is, first of all, you have to have a good system. Like we talk about this all the time. Like I feel like sometimes we're beating a dead horse, but you have to have systems in place, and that process of tracking the leads, keeping that lead information, the notes, their contact information is absolutely critical, because every single lead is valuable. And even if they don't do anything today, that doesn't mean that you can't go back and at some point in the future, they're going to be ready, or they're going to be in a place where they're interested, where they're qualified, where you're able to convert them. But if you're not tracking that information, you can't do anything with it. Like you say, you lost probably 300 leads, which if you extrapolate that out, how many thousands of dollars is that to your clinic? The second thing is accountability. Like you can't, again, we've said this before, you can't put good people into a broken system and expect them to do good things. Like you have to have the system in place, but then second, you have to hold them accountable. Like if they're not willing to follow your SOP, your playbook for how to do a certain thing, like they're just holding you back. Like, it's the old, you're only as strong as the weakest link. Well, if there's a weak link in that process, then you're not going to have the success that you could potentially have. And so you have to hold them accountable, help them. Number one, they have to understand what their responsibilities are, but then two, you have to hold them accountable, to make sure that they're doing those things. And if you're not willing to do that, you're just sacrificing your success. So it's absolutely critical that you get those two pieces in place, have that system, hold them accountable to that system, because at the end of the day, that's what's going to allow you to then ascend up that staircase and do other things that are going to add value to your clinic.
Yeah, dude. And again, just to add on to that, another thing that people are probably doing that costing you money is just making sure that when someone's come in, like just a simple smile, like understanding, like making eye contact at the front, that's a huge part. Mm-hmm. Again, this is something that you don't have, you know, you don't you just have to tell people like, hey, when someone's come in, make sure you have eye contact.
Yeah.
And the one thing we learned with that was like with many, dude, I had this one front desk person that would FaceTime people on shift. And again, this is crazy, right? Because me looking back, it's like, oh, how did I allow that to happen? Well, I didn't know because I was treating
patients, but like
not patient.
Personal.
Oh, I didn't worse. You're FaceTiming patient. That's not good.
Yeah.
So, you know, with one of those things where it's always good to have a pulse on what your staff is doing, especially the front staff. You know, if they're not making eye contact, if they're not being professional, if they're brushing people off, especially at a performance-based clinic that's charging cash, you know, out network, like the deliverable has to be like exceptional.
Yeah.
Right. And the professionalism has to be there. We all been to other doctor offices where you feel like you're interrupting their days. Yeah. And, you know, if I feel that, that's not a good thing. Yeah. So if you can go in and you can just sense the vibe of the clinic, like, you know, I just went to a dermatologist office not too long ago, and that office is exceptional because when you walk in, everything's dropped. Hey, how are you? Hey, you know, can we get you something? Right. And that's the same kind of vibe that we want to have here. Yeah. Right. So making that eye contact, having a smile, asking them how they are in their days, boom, absolutely crucial. Because if you're not doing that, people are walking out the door and they're never coming back.
Yeah,
and the worst.
I was going to say, it's important that people feel wanted and appreciated, especially in something so high trust, high touch, like physical therapy. Like it's a big step. It's a big investment for people to make. And if they don't feel appreciated, if they don't feel wanted, they're going to take their money somewhere else. It doesn't matter how good you are. If when they walk in that door, every interaction they have, if they don't feel comfortable, if they don't feel like it's leading towards an exceptional experience for them, they're going to go somewhere else. You know, we were talking, my wife and I, we were talking this past weekend, and she was sharing a story. Before she had our last child, we decided to take a little baby moon. So we went up to Boston. We stayed at the Boston Harbor Hotel. And from the moment we walked in, they asked us questions. They got to know us. They know who we were. And then every time we went in or out, people would say, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Salisbury, how are you doing today? You know, how's everything going? What'd you do today? What was fun? Well, my wife ended up getting food poisoning like the last day we were there. And so I had gone out a couple of times to, you know, go grab her some saltine crackers or some ginger, whatever it was. And they had noticed that I'd come down several times without her. And they're like, hey, how's everything going? We haven't seen Mrs. Salisbury. Is everything okay? And I was like, well, she kind of got a little food poisoning. Well, they took the initiative to send up some ginger or some Gatorade. You know, they sent her some things. They checked on her. Every single interaction we had with the staff at that hotel was phenomenal because they knew who we were. They knew why we were there. Another thing, when we checked in, they said, hey, you know, what brings you, you know, with us today? And we said, well, we're getting ready to have a baby. You know, we wanted a little quick getaway. Well, we'd gone out. When we came back that night, there was a teddy bear.
Wow.
There was a note, like just they took that information we gave them and they went above and beyond and sent us a gift, sent us a little note, you know, sent us, I think it was like some sparkling cider or something. Hey, congratulations on the baby. So it's one of those where even though you're a PT clinic, you're not like a 5-star hotel or a resort. Like you should still treat your patients like that because that's going to create that wow experience that people are going to remember as compared to just coming in and you're just a name, you're just a number. You know, there's really no interaction. There's really no, hey, you know, how's everything going? How's little Johnny doing in T-ball? You know, or how are the tryouts, you know, when are the trial, whatever the case may be, like just taking that extra step is going to elevate that experience for those patients. And that's what's going to ultimately create those brand champions on the back end, which is going to make your job a whole lot easier because they're going to be the ones that are going to be spreading the message for you.
Yeah. And listen, for people who are listening, you don't have to go and do that. Just do just be better.
Yes.
Like we talk some of the previous episode, we talk about when my team and I call other PT clinics to see how they answer the phone and all that stuff. I say, hey, whatever they do, we do the opposite.
Yeah.
Just do 10% better.
Yeah.
Right? Like have a friendly tone, right? Ask them for their name first thing first, not their insurance card.
Yep.
Like ask them like about them, like what's drive them. And that's lead to my third thing, that the things that you're doing now that are going to guarantee you to lose you money is if you don't listen to a phone call that your team are making, you cannot give them feedback and therefore they cannot get better.
Yep.
And the reason why I mention this is because, when we go over leads, when I have a meeting with my sales team, I get, okay, what leads do we have? And they say, well, this person declined due to so-and-so. I say, okay, what is their main goal?
Mm-hmm.
Right? The team has to be able to articulate what their main goal, what sport do they play? Oh, Division I soccer player toward the ACL. Okay, awesome. Now, what can we send to them that will give us permission to call in and check on them?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because the way I explained to my team is if you're trying to, and this is I explained this as boy logic, right? Because as a guy, you have to court a girl. And when you're courting a girl, like let's say you text, you get ghosted, like you have two options. You either keep going or you just stop. Yeah. But now you're going to keep going. You have to come in with a different approach, right? If you get to know the person you're trying to date and you know what they're into, they say, hey, if I say like, hey, do you want to hang out? This and that, and I didn't hear anything back. Okay, that clearly does not work, right? If I say, let's say my wife, she loves J-Lo, right? If I say, hey, I got J-Lo tickets. Like, do you want to go with me? I was thinking about you, right? So now, like, we raise the stake a little bit because we deliver value when it comes to that. So, for this instant, soccer player ACL, hey, have we sent them the book? No? Okay, good. Send them the book, then call and follow up to say, hey, do you get the book?
Yep.
And then if that doesn't work, send them YouTube videos.
Yep.
All these other things you can do. But that's why having a phone system that you can actually go and listen to phone call, you can then give feedback and then make adjustment, right? Like pro guys, they watch film all day. Why do they watch film? So they can make adjustment to see what's going to be ahead of them for this week's schedule.
Yeah.
So we're not running the tape. We can measure what we're not doing well, or we can say, hey, good job on that. Keep doing that.
Yeah.
Right. So again,
that's critical. Again, that's critical because, what's the old saying? What gets measured gets improved. If you're not listening to those calls, if you're not seeing those, if you're not hearing the interactions and seeing those interactions, how can you know what needs to improve? And again, you have people in those places. And so a lot of business owners assume that they're going to be the one, that they're going to take the initiative to get better at it. That's not always the case.
Yeah.
Like as a business owner, you have to hold your team accountable to their responsibilities, which means you have to review calls. You have to review those interactions to see what are they doing well, what aren't they doing well, how can we improve that process? Like you guys, you get that information, and then it allows you then to answer that, well, what happens now question that we should all be asking at every decision point along that patient journey. If they don't come in or they don't, they kind of ghost you. Okay, well, what happens now? In this case, hey, did we send them the book? I mean, you took the time to write this ACL book. Have we sent it to them? If not, well, let's send it over there. Okay, well, what happens now? So it's just, it's tracking those results. It's listening to those calls. It's reviewing those metrics, whatever the case may be, and then making data-driven, information-driven decisions as a result of those calls or those interactions or whatever the case may be.
Yeah. And the last point, I guess, when you're in a service-based business, right, we obviously get paid when people show up to their appointment. Now, you don't get paid when people don't schedule. This is literally the easiest thing you can do. You did all this work to get people in the door. And if you're not scheduling people out 2 or 3 weeks ahead of time, you can guarantee that you're going to lose money.
Yep.
Right. And you're not just losing money, you're also guaranteed that they're going to get poor outcome. And therefore, they're going to be disgruntled.
Yep.
And they're not going to give you any referral.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So like the way I look at it, like we measure productivity, by the end of 1 month, we need to know that we're halfway there for the next month.
Yeah.
If we're not halfway there for the next month already, that means we didn't schedule people enough.
Yep.
Right. So, the one thing we always encourage and is absolute things that the PTs at my clinic have to do is after an evaluation, you have to walk the patient up. Tell them the amount of time, frequency, and week, and they have to schedule that out immediately.
Yeah.
And then 2 weeks into that schedule, and where they need to schedule out for 2 more weeks, then the PTs can either say, hey, by the way, for the next 2 weeks or the next 4 weeks, this is the frequency is going to be. Here's the goal that we're trying to do. And they have to be able to communicate that with the front desk, right? So that the front desk can relay the same message. Because otherwise, now we're losing people. That's why people get drop off. And you've been to any place, right? So, for example, in PT, if you're getting better and you're out pain, people think that's the end. Mm-hmm. Right? You always have to anchor that, hey, within the few weeks, you're going to feel a lot better.
Yep.
And that's when actually the work gets started.
Yes.
Right. And I actually learned this from my wife. And when she sees her patient and she's a psychologist, like when people are feeling happier, that's when they want to leave. But then that's when the real work gets done.
Yes.
Right. Once you clean up the clutter in your mind, once you clean up the clutter when it comes to your pain point, that's when you get to address all the underlying limitation. And we'd like to make that across from day one. And it's funny, we had an evaluation kid post-op ACL, and we literally just say, by the time you hit 6 months, you're going to feel so good that you're going to want to go back to soccer. But that's when the grav is at the weakest. And that's when we need to work on X, Y, and Z, right? Yeah. We set expectations 6 months ahead.
Yeah. Yeah.
I say, I guarantee you and I are going to get in an argument. Your parents going to be involved because you're going to want to push to go back.
Yep.
I was like, I'm going to tell you right now, here's why we don't do this. And here's why it's important to stay on course.
Yes.
Right. So now they know like that we also don't play that game because we want them to succeed. Yeah. So we don't schedule people out. Not only you're losing money, you're losing trust and you're not getting the outcome. And people only go ahead.
Go ahead. Go ahead. I was
going to say people usually measure their success on a day-to-day basis. Mm-hmm. Now, if you schedule people ahead and then anchor that too, you can always go look back like, hey, by the way, 4 weeks ago, you weren't able to do this. Now we're doing this.
Yeah.
Within the next 4 weeks, that's going to be your next goal. So that's how we're going to measure you, right? You always have to anchor the outcome, that the short-term goal with their long-term goal and how they're moving towards that goal. If you're not doing that, you guarantee people are going to select off and say, I'm done. One of the biggest thing I've learned is that when people are coming in because they have a trip, hey, I got a golf trip coming up, I got a ski trip coming up, they will be so intentional. They'll show up. Mm-hmm. They're never late. As soon as the trip is done, boom, they don't show up again.
Yep.
So if we know someone has a trip, we would say, okay, you have this trip coming up. When's the next trip?
Yep.
Right? So we ask them next thing because we know we're going to solve this problem. We also want them to stay the course so that way they don't run into this issue into the future.
Yep. Yeah. I think I think the biggest thing takeaway for me anyways is you're setting those expectations up front and you're basically laying out the roadmap for what's going to happen, what it's going to look like over whatever that period of time is that they need to be with you. And so when they don't show up, they already know that they're screwing up that plan that you've put in place, that you've talked about, that vision kind of that you've given them of what the process is going to look like. And so you are able to then hold them accountable to that process because you've laid that out. So them not showing up, they already know what the downside of that is. And so they're more like, and again, it's just kind of psychological, factors coming into play, or human psychology, where they already know what those downside risks are because you've already had that conversation. Like you've set that expectation up front. And so now you are in a position where you can hold them accountable because you've already told them, if we don't do it like this, this is what's going to happen. But if we do it like this, if we follow this plan that we've laid out, this is what's going to happen. And you've even gone so far with the, D1 soccer player to say, we're going to get to this point and you're going to say this, you're going to feel like this. This is why you're wrong. Now you're not going to necessarily say it like that, but you're like, this is why we need to keep going, or you're not ready to go back yet because of X, Y, and Z. And so you do a really good job of articulating what that entire process looks like, what those sticking points are along the way, which then gives them the information they need to stop justifying like dropping off. My question for you is, why do you think that's such a challenge for other providers? Like what are the issues that cause that drop off for them, to where they're not scheduling those next visits out?
Well, I'll speak on my own experience, right? I think when I was younger, I was probably very ego driven, where I say, oh, if I just get them in the door, I get them in, they'll stick with me.
Yeah.
And I was putting my needs in front of the patient's needs. And rather than making it about them, I was making it about me. I was trying to pat myself in the back, like, oh, I'm so good. They're going to want to stay with me, this and that. But at the end of the day, people coming to see you because they have a need that they have to solve. Once you solve that need problem and you don't say, what else do you want to do? Then they will start dropping off. You have to see the long-term future for them. So when I tell my team, it's like, our job here is to see their potential and articulate their potential. Who could they be without this issue? And then encourage them to pursue that.
Yeah.
Right. And I think most PTs, they only focus on getting the new patients in, getting the evals in. But then once the patient's in, they don't want to worry about like retaining that patient. Right. I see this in fitness a lot. Like when I was like a personal trainer, it's like you get someone coming in, signing up for group class. They're like, oh, great. We got new members signing up. But at that point, you start getting too comfortable and you start dropping the ball a little bit. So rather than keep ascending and keep raising the bar, make the experience better month to month, then that's when people are going to lose. Or another thing I learned in fitness is that people will hit a plateau because you get newbie gains, right? If you only like tracking exactly. They go if you're only tracking PR and how much weight loss, you're going to hit a certain point. And if you're only tracking that, they're no longer going to see value in what you can provide because they associate their cost per month. Oh, I'm not losing weight. Why am I paying this for? Oh, I'm not getting stronger. Why am I paying this for? Right. If you can actually say, well, how's your quality of life? What are you able to do? Like, how do you feel about yourself? You're like, all of that stuff playing a role because that's a soft skill stuff, right? How confident do you feel? Like, how do you feel when you take your shirt off, right? Those are the things that I gather from the fitness perspective because with fitness, again, high touch, competitive, right? Now, if you're not reminding people of who they could be working with you and how you can help them reach that potential, you're going to lose them in the process. And then at that point, to be honest, like you're not seeing it through with them, and therefore you're kind of wasting your time and their time.
Yeah. I think a big part of that is again the whole psychology. The reason they give you initially probably isn't the real reason why they're doing what they're doing. There's usually an underlying issue, and so again, the D1 soccer player is an example. Yes, he wants to get back on the field as quickly as he can, but ultimately he probably has bigger aspirations beyond that. And so it's our job to understand, to kind of pull that out and figure out what that is, because then, like you say, we can anchor what we're doing, the recommendations that we're making to them, the treatment that we're giving them to that underlying that real why that they have. And again, it keeps them anchored to the process that you've laid out. If we can understand what the real reason is that they're, that they want to accomplish whatever it is they're trying to accomplish or do whatever it is that they're trying to do.
Yeah. No, I think that's pretty much just sum it up, dude. Like these are like mistakes I've made countless of time, and you're going to lose a lot of money like I did. And I don't want people to go through that. Right. So I think this is probably the most tactical thing that you can take away from this podcast. And again, if you enjoy the show, please like and share people, and then subscribe to the YouTube channel, to our podcast. And again, if you're ready to take some action, just book a call with us and let's just help you grow. And next week we're gonna actually go to some deeper stuff. So I'm excited for next week as well. So
it's always fun.
But Chesson, thank you, man. I appreciate you.
Yeah, man. No, it's always a good time, man. Love rapping and sharing the knowledge and helping clinicians out, man. That's what we're all about.
Awesome. And we'll see you guys next week.